Imagine this. You're walking down the street. Your eyes land on a cafe that feels oddly familiar. You've never been there before, but at the same time, you feel like you've been there. It's not just a distant memory, it's as if you've lived that exact moment before. This phenomenon, known as deja vu, might not just be a simple glitch in your brain. In fact, what's really behind that experience could be something far deeper, something cosmic, a sign that you're connecting with a version of yourself in another reality. You might be thinking, okay, but what does that have to do with another me? Let me take you there. According to quantum physics, particularly the multiverse theory, it's possible that there are infinite versions of us, living in parallel realities. These realities aren't far off in another galaxy. They could be almost identical to ours, but with small differences. And when you feel deja vu, it might just be a little overlap of those worlds, a brief glimpse, perhaps, of a parallel reality. Now, imagine if, instead of just brushing off that deja vu, you started using it as a clue, a sign, perhaps, that your parallel self is trying to communicate with you. It's not something you can touch or see directly, but it's these little hints that manifest themselves, like a strange synchrony. To better understand this, think about times when you felt a deep connection with something or someone, like you've known that person from somewhere, but can't quite explain why. Or that time you made a decision in your life and, over time, you realized that maybe it wasn't really your choice, but something preordained. And trust me, this isn't just pure coincidence. Let me give you an example. Remember that time you felt like you'd been to that place before, when in reality, you never actually visited? Maybe that place was a decision made by another version of you. Or maybe it was an experience you were meant to have in a parallel timeline, but for some reason, you veered off course. The dimensions may not be as far apart as they seem, and your deja vu could very well be one of the manifestations of this overlap. So, how can you use this to your advantage? Start paying attention when these moments happen. Pause. Instead of just going with the flow, ask yourself, what's happening here? What can I learn from this? When you feel that familiarity, look for patterns. A practical example would be to keep a journal of these moments. Don't just write down what happened, but also what you were feeling, what choice you made at that moment. Over time, you might start to notice that something bigger is at play, something beyond your immediate understanding. The secret here, my friend, is to start questioning and connecting with these experiences. When you begin to notice these overlaps, you'll start seeing the world through a different lens. But remember, deja vu is not just a brain error. It could be direct communication from a version of yourself that has something to tell you. And sometimes, what seems like a memory from the past might actually be a vision of the future, or from a reality you haven't fully grasped yet. And if you're ready to truly dive deeper into this connection, there's another phenomenon you've probably experienced that could hold the key to unlocking even stronger communication between you and your parallel self. And I'll tell you all about it in the next section. Have you ever woken up from a dream so vivid, so real, that for a moment, you couldn't tell whether you had just lived through an experience or simply dreamt it? These aren't your ordinary dreams. They feel like stepping into another life. The emotions, the places, the people, they're not just figments of your imagination. They feel like memories, like another version of you is living out a story that somehow mirrors your own, but with a twist. Dreams like these are strange, aren't they? The kind that linger with you long after you wake up. And while it's easy to brush them off as just a wild creation of your mind, there's a deeper possibility here. What if these dreams aren't just random, fleeting images? What if they're messages, a bridge from your parallel self trying to communicate through the veil of sleep? Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, once spoke about the concept of the collective unconscious, a shared mind or pool of memories and experiences that connect all human beings. But what if, in our dream states, this collective unconscious goes even further? What if dreams don't just draw from our collective experiences, but from the experiences of other versions of ourselves? What if your parallel self is trying to make contact with you through these intense, sometimes cryptic dreams? Imagine, for a moment, that you're in a dream where you find yourself in a completely different city, one that you've never visited in real life, but the streets feel familiar, the people feel familiar. Perhaps you're walking down an alleyway, and you encounter a version of yourself, someone who looks just like you, but with subtle differences. Maybe they say something that resonates deeply with you, as if they've been living the life you never chose. Or maybe they tell you something you've been longing to hear, something that hits you at the core of your being. Now, before you dismiss it as just a fantasy, consider the idea that these dreams could be glimpses into a life you could have lived, or even a life that is happening right now in a parallel universe. These encounters might not just be happenstance. They could be a form of communication, a direct message sent to you by your parallel self. So, how do you begin to harness this power? Start by keeping a dream journal. And not just the dreams you remember most clearly. Record everything, even the fragmented ones. If a dream feels particularly vivid, or if it sticks with you, write down every detail you can recall. The feelings, the faces, the places. Pay attention to recurring themes or images. The more you practice this, the more you'll start to see patterns, and perhaps even uncover messages that are hidden in plain sight. For example, let's say you've been dreaming about a particular location, a small shop, over and over again. You've never seen it before, and yet it feels incredibly familiar. You may want to ask yourself why this place keeps appearing. Could it be tied to a decision you'll soon face in your waking life? Could your parallel self be showing you this spot because it represents a crossroads, an important moment that lies ahead? The key here is awareness. By paying closer attention to your dreams, you'll be able to connect the dots between what your mind is showing you and the life experiences that are playing out around you. You might even begin to notice a strange synchronicity between what you dream and what happens in your waking life. It's like your dream self is preparing you for something ahead, giving you a roadmap to follow, or perhaps even warning you about an impending choice. As you develop your dream practice, you'll come to realize that dreams aren't just random brain activity. They are bridges between dimensions, between versions of yourself, each one trying to communicate. And in the midst of these messages, you'll uncover truths that might change your perspective, help you avoid mistakes, or even guide you toward your greatest potential. But this is only the beginning. There's another phenomenon that can give you even deeper insights into your connection with a parallel version of you, and that's synchronicity. The strange, seemingly unexplainable coincidences that happen in your life. And trust me, you don't want to miss the next part, because synchronicities might just be the most obvious signal your parallel self is sending you. Have you ever experienced a moment so perfectly timed, so impossible to explain, that it made you pause and wonder, is this just a coincidence, or is something much deeper at play? Maybe you were thinking about an old friend, and within minutes, you get a message from them. Or perhaps you're pondering a decision in your life, and suddenly, the answer appears right in front of you. A billboard, a conversation, a random encounter. These aren't just random occurrences. They are synchronicities. Moments when the universe seems to conspire in your favor, guiding you towards something you can't quite put your finger on. But here's the thing. Synchronicities may not be random at all. Some believe they are the universe's way of pointing you in the right direction. But what if they are actually messages from your parallel self? What if these coincidences are not just chance, but deliberate signals sent from another version of you, guiding you, trying to help you navigate a life they already know you can have? Consider the concept of meaningful coincidences, a term coined by Carl Jung. He proposed that when two seemingly unrelated events occur together in a way that is deeply meaningful to you, it's not just randomness. It's the universe aligning in such a way that it's trying to tell you something. Now, imagine if these synchronicities were being sent by your parallel self, who has already lived through the decisions you're facing and is reaching across dimensions to offer you guidance. Let's take a real-life example. Picture you're struggling with a big decision. Should you take that job in a new city, or stay where you are and continue on your current path? The thought has been weighing heavily on your mind for days. You wake up one morning, unsure, and as you drive to work, you spot a street sign for that very city you've been considering. It's impossible. There's no reason for that sign to be there, but there it is. Is it just coincidence? Or is your parallel self trying to give you a nudge, showing you that the path you've been questioning might be the one you're meant to follow? Here's where you can start using synchronicities to your advantage. Begin by paying closer attention to those moments when things seem too perfect to be accidental. The next time you experience a strange coincidence, stop and reflect. Is there a hidden message here? Write it down, even if it seems insignificant at first. You'll be surprised at how often these synchronistic events have a deeper meaning when you look back at them. For example, let's say you're thinking about changing careers and, out of nowhere, a conversation pops up in your life about exactly that. Someone you meet randomly tells you about a career path that you had been considering but put off. Is it a coincidence? Or is it your parallel self, who has already made that career shift, trying to get your attention? Take note of the signs and patterns that emerge. It's like looking for breadcrumbs that are leading you towards something bigger. But there's more to synchronicity than just paying attention. You can actively cultivate it. By being more open and aware of the world around you, you begin to notice these coincidences more frequently. And when you start to actively look for them, you may find that the universe, or your parallel self, begins to send even clearer messages. For instance, you might choose a specific day to take a walk and clear your head. You decide to wear a jacket you haven't worn in months, and as you walk through the park, you hear a conversation that completely relates to something you've been trying to solve in your life. It's as if that moment was waiting for you to hear it. Or maybe you're watching a show, and a character says something that strikes you deeply, something you needed to hear, but didn't know it until that moment. These synchronicities don't happen by accident. They are your parallel self reaching out to guide you, gently nudging you toward a truth or decision you might not have seen before. The most important thing is to trust in these moments. When you begin to notice them, you'll start feeling a connection to something larger, something beyond your everyday reality. It's like a hidden thread that runs through everything, and by following it, you're allowing yourself to be guided by something deeper, something wiser. And as you begin to see the universe, or your parallel self, aligning the pieces of your life, you may also start noticing something even stranger, something that doesn't quite fit into the reality you've always known. It's subtle at first, glitches, odd shifts in time and space. And those, my friend, are the most intriguing signs of all. Stay tuned, because in the next section, we'll explore how those glitches might be one of the most direct ways your parallel self is communicating with you. Have you ever had a moment when the world around you felt off? Not just a small hiccup in your perception, but a full-on shift in reality. Maybe you've walked into a room, and for a split second, you swear the furniture was in a different position, or perhaps you noticed the time on your watch skip a few minutes without explanation. Or even stranger, maybe you find yourself driving down the same road you've driven 1,000 times, but suddenly, everything seems unfamiliar. The trees, the buildings, even the way the street turns, feels subtly wrong. This is no simple misperception. This is what some refer to as time slips or reality glitches, a phenomenon where reality itself seems to momentarily break down. And here's the eerie part. It might not be a glitch at all. It could be your parallel self reaching out, showing you a version of reality that's slightly different from your own. We've all heard stories of people who experienced time slips, where they suddenly find themselves in an alternate version of their surroundings, sometimes for only a few seconds or minutes. For example, a person might walk into a cafe they frequent every day, but something is different. The layout is altered, the people are strangers, and the overall atmosphere feels like it belongs to another time. They might step back out, and everything returns to normal, as if nothing happened. It's as if they stepped into a parallel world, one where their choices, their past, and their present have unfolded differently. Now, what if these time slips aren't just random occurrences or imagination? What if they're your parallel self attempting to communicate something crucial? Maybe they're showing you an alternative path, of what could have been scenario that could serve as a warning or a lesson. Perhaps it's a glimpse into a timeline where a decision you made turned out differently, or where you took a completely different course of action. But why would your parallel self do this? Think of it as a message, a way for your other self to tell you, I've already lived through this. You can avoid the mistakes I made, or take the path I didn't. Maybe you walked down the wrong road at some point, and your parallel self is trying to guide you toward the right one. Or maybe there's something you've overlooked in your life, a decision that could change the trajectory of your future, and your parallel self is giving you a glimpse of what's at stake. So, how do you deal with these strange occurrences when they happen to you? First, don't ignore them. These glitches may be fleeting, but they hold valuable information. The next time you experience a time slip or notice a shift in reality, take note of it. Record the moment in your journal, and ask yourself, what is different about this moment? What did I feel when it happened? Pay attention to the thoughts or feelings that arise during these instances. They may point you towards something you need to understand. For instance, let's say you've experienced a time slip where you suddenly found yourself in a completely different room than you expected. You were in one part of your house, and in an instant, you felt as if you had walked into an unfamiliar place. The walls were a different color, and there was a painting on the wall you don't remember ever seeing. When this happens, pause and reflect. Could this alternate room represent an area of your life where you've made a choice that doesn't align with your deeper desires? Could your parallel self be showing you where you've deviated from your true path, giving you a nudge to return to what truly matters? The key to understanding these time slips and reality glitches is awareness. These moments are not accidents. They are glimpses into the multidimensional nature of your existence. You're not just a single version of yourself. You are connected to many versions, many potential realities, all unfolding simultaneously. And every time one of these glitches occurs, it's like the universe is pulling back a curtain to show you a glimpse of the larger picture. So, the next time reality bends in a strange way, don't just chalk it up to imagination or a momentary lapse in attention. Take a deep breath, observe what's happening around you, and ask yourself what the message might be. These time slips aren't just warnings, they are invitations. Invitations to explore the infinite possibilities of who you could be, and how you can align your current path with a greater flow of your multidimensional self. And with that, we move to the final sign of communication from your parallel self, the mysterious sense of being watched, or the uncanny feeling that something just beyond your perception is always with you. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'll explain everything in the next part. Trust me, this final sign will change the way you view the world around you. Have you ever had the unmistakable feeling that someone is watching you? It's not paranoia, not an overactive imagination. It's that tingling sensation that creeps up your spine, making you glance over your shoulder, only to find no one there. Or perhaps you've been alone in a room, and for no apparent reason, you suddenly feel like you're not truly alone. The air around you shifts, your intuition goes into overdrive, and you're left with the undeniable feeling that something, or someone, is just there, lingering just outside your view. While many would dismiss this as nothing more than a trick of the mind, what if I told you it's not? What if, instead, this feeling is an actual sign from your parallel self, an attempt at reaching out, a way for them to get your attention, to remind you that you are not simply an isolated being in a single dimension, but part of a much larger, interconnected web of realities? This sensation of being watched could very well be your parallel self, observing you, aware of your choices, and subtly urging you to align with a greater purpose. There's something deeply mystical about the sensation of being watched. It's almost like a deep, instinctual awareness that someone is aware of you, even if you can't see them. It's the same feeling you might get when you sense someone staring at you from across a room, only to turn around and find no one there. But here's the truth. What if they are there, but not in the way you expect? What if they are not a physical being, but a version of you from another dimension, quietly watching, waiting, and offering subtle guidance? In moments like this, when you feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, pause for a moment. Instead of shrugging it off as a trick of the mind, lean into it. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What am I supposed to learn from this sensation? In doing so, you may start to uncover something extraordinary about yourself, something that goes beyond the boundaries of your own reality. Imagine you're walking through a quiet park late at night, and the moonlight casts long shadows across the path. You've been walking for a while, enjoying the solitude, but suddenly, you feel that distinct sensation that you're being observed. It's not a threatening feeling, it's not fear, but something deeper, something primal. As you pause, taking in the stillness of the night, a thought crosses your mind. What if this feeling is not just in my head? Could it be that your parallel self, a version of you who has perhaps walked this path before, is watching you from another timeline? Could they be observing your choices, silently guiding you towards something you've yet to realize? In fact, this sensation might be your parallel self communicating with you in the most subtle way possible, through your intuition, through your heightened awareness of something just beyond your perception. It could be the nudge you need to make a decision, the feeling that prompts you to take a different route, or the instinct to reach out to someone when you hadn't planned to. The key to understanding this feeling is to trust it, to allow yourself to believe that there is more going on around you than meets the eye. Our senses are finely attuned to the physical world, but what if we could also tap into the unseen, those other dimensions, those parallel realities? If you learn to embrace this feeling, you might just unlock the ability to sense messages from your parallel self, guiding you, warning you, or encouraging you to move forward with confidence. So, the next time you feel that odd sensation of being watched, whether you're at home, at work, or walking alone in a quiet space, take a moment to reflect. Could this be your parallel self reaching out to guide you? Instead of ignoring it, try to tune in to your intuition. Is there something in your life you're overlooking? Is there a decision you've been avoiding that requires your full attention? Your parallel self is there, silently supporting you from another dimension, and the sensation of being watched might be just the sign you need to take that next step. These 5 signs are not random. They are not mere coincidences or tricks of the mind. They are messages from your parallel self, glimpses into a larger, more complex reality that we are only beginning to understand. And as you start to pay attention to these subtle clues, you will uncover a deeper connection to your own life, your choices, and your path. So, my friend, the next time you feel a ripple in reality, a strange coincidence, or a glance from the corner of your mind, don't dismiss it. Embrace it. Your parallel self is trying to tell you something. Are you ready to listen?